Thank you for tuning in to the Redefining You podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by the lovely Dalanika Chambers Raymond. We will be talking about the love of a mother. So, mamas and mamas to be, definitely tune in. This is an episode you do not want to miss. Let's get started. Hey, you. Welcome back to the Redefining You podcast, season 3, episode 6. We are over halfway there, guys, and we're back with yet another episode. We've got company, but before we get into all the good stuff, do what we always say: like, follow, interact with us. You guys have been engaging on another level, and I'm so happy about that. Thank you. It gives us the feedback that we need to know that we're giving you the content that you want, that you need. This season is very special and very near and dear to my heart because we are actually healing out loud this season. It's something that God has mandated me to do in this season. Many times we like to heal in the shadows, alone, where people don't have access to us. And God said, no, this season we need to heal in community. So that's exactly what we are doing. We are healing in community and we're healing out loud. The Bible tells us that we overcome by the word of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. So we're healing out loud this season. And joining us on today's episode is yet another gem. I'm going to allow her to introduce herself. But ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that do watch, welcome, Dalanika Chambers. Hey, love, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you? I'm so happy to be here.
Good. So we're gonna have a great episode today. You guys are gonna learn a little bit more about why she's here. But Delanica, introduce yourself. Tell the people about who you are, what you do, the whole nine.
So I'm Dalanika Chambers Raymond. Actually, Chambers is my maiden name, but it's something that I decided to carry over a little bit. And just so I am authentic to who I am and like my journey, family background, all of those things. But always first, Christ first. So I'm a child of God, of course. But I'm also a wife. I'm a mom. I'm a daughter, I'm a friend, so I'm all of those things. And I'm an educator. I support families. I do things as it pertains to family engagement and empowering families. I'm all about family.
I love it. I love it. Hence the reason she's here on today's episode, because I guess right now, depending upon where the Holy Spirit wants to take this conversation, right now it's going to be centered around a mother's love. And Delonica has a very unique story that we're going to dive into and hope that you can also glean from in whatever season you are in your journey to motherhood or parenthood. You could be knee deep in it right now, or empty nesters, or you could be an aspiring mother. Wherever you are in your journey, I'm hopeful that this will meet you and give you some needed, pointed support. And I'm so excited about this episode because we understand this whole mama thing. Okay, so Delanica, tell us a little bit about your upbringing. Like, what was childhood like to, just to give us some framework.
Childhood was a little bit interesting, I would say. It was
Okay.
very much cultured because I'm a first generation American.
Mm.
Second on my mom's side, but if you tell her that she's not Caribbean, she'll let you know that she is a first generation American, like she's basically there as well. But my family migrated from the Caribbean.
Okay.
And so my
What
father's side
island?
is from Jamaica and
Okay.
Jamaica. And then my mom's side is from Trinidad and Grenada. And so when my grandmother migrated, she went to England and then she came here, and that's how she had my mom. But all of her siblings are from the island. So she is an islander through and through. And I like to say that
Mm.
about myself as well. My father came here in his 20s, but the way we grew up, even the things that we eat, just the people that were around were all Caribbean. And I actually was in a melting pot in New York. So I was born in Brooklyn. We came here. We were in Ocala, and at first we were excited, but then as we got older and we realized our family was still there and those things, we always wanted to move back. Then I went to UCF in Orlando. I loved
Yeah.
it. I've been in Central Florida now for a very long time. But
Mhm.
Orlando was basically became my second home until I became a mature adult, moved away, dated, got married. Now I have a daughter. And so we are more in a suburban part of town just because I want her to have, yard space and all of the things that I had growing up. So,
That
yeah.
part, heavy on the yard space, heavy on the yard space. So for those of you that need a little bit of context to how we met at UCF, but not like many of our other guests who we met in the gospel choir, right? So we didn't meet in the gospel choir. We met through Julius. I think you and Julius is my husband for those that need context. If it is your first time here, Julius is my husband, and I think you guys had a class together. How'd that even work? I don't even know, but we talk all
So
the
so it's always interesting. I know that he's an awesome singer, and I've always admired that.
Yeah.
But we have a mutual friend also, Shahid. And so he likes to sing, but he wasn't in the choir. And so we just kind of ran in the same circles. And I do believe we might have had sociology together. So, I mean, we all
Gotcha.
started around that time, but I did appreciate UCF and just the people that I met because it was such a melting pot.
It really was.
I met people from like Africa and the Caribbean, and obviously you're so beautiful. So it's just been a joy and a pleasure creating those lifelong friendships.
Yeah, for sure. I don't, like I said, I don't even know how Julius introduced me to you, but when I met you, it was an instant connection. Like I was like, she dope, she cool people. I know some people, depending upon who you are and how you grew up, I don't want my man introducing me to somebody of some other woman. Nah, ain't none of that. She was cool people. She was all right with me. So much so, she was actually she was on the board, or is on the board technically. I mean, we haven't been doing much with YEW Enterprises currently because of my relocation and just all the dust that's still in the air, and just it's a lot of things going on. But she's actually one of the board members of my nonprofit, YEW Enterprises. So yeah, like we connected. She's amazing at what she does. She's so educated, so smart, but she's genuinely like a kindred spirit, right? So
Thank
I
you.
want the people to have just a little bit more context. UCF is a unique place. Let me just go on record and say that. I was one of the rare cases or rare breeds. Like when somebody say, "Oh, where are you from?" Gainesville. No, but like, where are your people from? Um, Africa, I'm assuming, but
Right.
I'll tell people I'm a regular black person. Like I don't have no Caribbean roots, none of that. Like I didn't have the interesting story. I was one of the ones who wanted to do ancestry.com so I can get some context of where I come from. And granted, they all trace back to the motherland, Africa, but
Right.
people are in Georgia,
Right.
Miami. Yeah, I didn't get any of the interesting Caribbean story, but yeah. But I say that because UCF was a great place for me to have an appreciation for every Black person has a different experience of Blackness, right? And I didn't really realize that until I got to UCF because where I'm from, most people aren't, Jamaican, or I had one of my best friends was from the Virgin Islands, but that was like
Mhm.
one of the only people, and that's how she was so exotic to us because it was like, what? Girl, you really be out here? Y'all was next to the beach. It was like, yeah, that was like every day. You
Yeah.
get excited to go to Daytona, and
And I
it's
think
not the
one of the
same.
things when we initially moved to Florida, that was some culture shock for me.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've ever been to New York, anybody who's listening, but like when you go, especially Brooklyn, everybody is from like an island.
for sure.
So like even when we go back and we visit family, I'm just like, I miss it here. And the restaurants are different. Where we might see like all of these American pop-ups, it's literally like Jamaican or Trini or Caribbean pop-ups all over. Haitian food, whatever you want, you can find it, right?
Yeah.
And so they would say, "You're not Black, you're Jamaican." And I'm like, well, we're Black. And like, like, my family is like, we're Black and we're proud, but
Hmm.
people did not view us that way. And
Yeah.
so it is a different experience. And there is, I think, story to be noted there.
Hmm.
And yeah.
So Tell us about the uniqueness of like the relationship with your mother, because I know they talk about Caribbean mothers and what that's like. I just got a regular black mama. So tell us what your relationship was like with your mom.
I feel like if I call my mom right now and I say I stubbed my toe, she might get on the highway from Ocala and be like, which toe? So she is that mom. In fact, we were talking today, my sister-in-law and I, because she's just as supportive with her about I know I will be, but I just have to say it. I hope I'm this dedicated to my children,
Yeah.
like when I'm older, because anything that I need, she's there. But also when we were growing up, like her my grandparents live with us. That's why it was so hard. Like when my grandfather passed away, he's not like a distant grandfather, not to
Yeah.
diminish anybody else's relationship, but it's different when you're living with that body your entire life.
Yeah.
So it hits really hard, But I remember cousins and aunties and just different family members staying with us as I was growing up, and her house just kind of being like that refuge. You want some refuge, and you can come over to our house.
Yeah.
We had the pool, and then that comes with its own things because when people, even friends, if they know you have a pool, they're like, "Oh, your family's rich,"
Listen,
and
you're
you're like,
elite, okay?
"Right,
What?
you look rich, but." So
Okay, so that's the same because
yeah,
seriously, living in Florida, if you have a pool at your house, oh, you are wealthy. I
yeah,
mean, and I'll say this, in-ground pool. Now, you could have a pool above ground, you can still be, a little
right.
uppity. But in-ground pool, oh, that's
We had an
like,
in-ground.
girl, y'all done made it.
Everybody's like, "Oh, you have a pool?
Yeah, y'all
Okay,
done
we're
made it,
coming over there."
okay?
Yeah.
It's so funny because I can remember um my family has a unique situation where one of my aunts prior to my grandfather and grandmother, marrying, my grandfather had a daughter that he never knew about until like we were born. So he's got children and grandchildren at this point, and we meet a brand new aunt that we never knew about, from a relationship before him and my grandmother ever got together. And it was just so unique. But when we met her, she and her husband had a pool. She was the only auntie in the family that had a
Right.
pool. So we used to love going to my auntie's house to swim and do all the things. I can remember birthday parties over there. So yes, memories galore, memories galore. I'm really curious to know, like, what was your journey to motherhood like? Like, tell us that story. Tell us your journey to motherhood.
You know the saying, like, if you tell God your plans, he'll laugh.
That part.
That's what I feel like my journey was like. I'm
Mm,
very type A, so I'm very much like, we're doing this. And, we had so many stories, and we've been to community groups where our friends would share it took them so long to get pregnant, right? So
yeah.
I'm in grad school and I'm like, okay, so if we try now, maybe it'll take a year. It didn't take a year. It happened like when we tried to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first time around, I actually had a very early miscarriage. And
Mm,
I don't remember how early it was. I just know that they were like, it's too early. They called it like, like a spontaneous abortion type of
yeah.
thing. And then a little bit shortly after that, we tried again. It happened just as fast. And so even, I mean, a part of that too was kind of bittersweet because the first time there's that excitement when you share it. I
Yeah.
think the second time our reaction to it was a little bit more guarded.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's always, I don't know if that's always going to taint the way that we view pregnancy, right?
Mm.
But when I told him the second time, he definitely was like excited, but still like, how do you know?
There's
Like,
a
are you
fear.
sure?
Yeah, for
Right.
sure.
And then from there, they were like, well, your hormones are like so high. Maybe it wasn't, maybe the last one wasn't completely gone or whatever. And so they were
Mhm.
drawing my blood like every 2 days until it like stabilized.
Mm,
They said it could have been one of two things. Maybe it was twins. Maybe the hormones are still left. But yeah, we just had little Genevieve. So it was definitely unpredictable. The entire pregnancy wasn't. And I feel like, I know we'll get to that, but I was just like, the
yeah.
one thing I didn't want to happen, or there's like one of two things, because, you read blogs, you're always looking at like pregnancy journals. And one of those things happened. And so, yeah, I'm here. Healing.
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
healing. So if you don't mind, I mean, that was her journey to motherhood, but her motherhood journey has been very, very different.
Yes.
She and I, we talked about this offline, and in reality, we talked about it yesterday. Just God, I feel like God was very strategic in introducing us because,
Yeah.
unbeknownst to me, some of the things that I've experienced in my life, my children are older than Genevieve, but my experience in motherhood and me taking that leap of faith and writing my devotional, I talk
Yeah.
a lot about how, you know, I really had to learn how to love me because very similar. I grew up around a lot of love. I was the baby of the
Yeah.
baby of the baby, right? And
Mhm.
so I'm just encompassed in love constantly, encompassed in protection. And when you grow up like that, which is a beautiful thing, you love isn't really lacking. So you never have to kind of get it out the mud type of thing. I never experienced that, like feeling like my mama didn't love me or that we were
Mhm.
competing in any way, shape, or form. Like it was none of that. It was all love. And I think that was because of how my grandparents raised my mom. Like both of my maternal grandparents are still alive and they're still married. They've been married for 60 plus years, right? So my experience around love and marriage and parenthood and motherhood has been shaped.
Mhm.
How do you think your upbringing shaped how you parent Genevieve now? Like, how do you feel like it shaped it?
So definitely as a mother, I aspire to be her.
Yeah.
And I feel like it really is self-sacrificial. Like she
Hmm.
made a lot of sacrifices. And there are things like, about her relationship. I think that would be a different segment and things that I'm like, okay, bad example. Gratefully, they're still married in those things, but
Yeah.
everybody can, and you do come to like a realization as you get older.
Yeah.
However, her ability to mother was never compromised. And
Yeah.
so I really, really appreciate that. And her mother's ability to mother, amazing. Like, can I say I love my grandma more? I can't say that. I'm kidding. But like grandma is grandma. That's like a whole different type of love. I could remember like in New York, if I'd be like, my stomach hurts, like she would lay with me at night and rub my belly and just baby me. But like my mom in the same token, like when we tell people we lived in Ocala and she worked in Tampa, and there were like certain fears that she had as a mom, like, oh my God, I'm like, we were latchkey kids,
Yeah.
because
Oh,
my
okay.
father was in New York and those type of things until he eventually moved down. But I think being from a migrant family, you just kind of learn to survive, but she did it
Hmm.
well. And people didn't know, like, she is the master of like saving faces. If we're out in public, we're like the best polished, well-groomed kids family. And we really are. But she
Hmm.
just wanted to make sure that we always like exuded that no matter where we went. And yeah, so I just feel like when I'm mothering, like I'm never half stepping with the way I dress my daughter. I'm never half stepping in like the things I provide her to eat and like those type of things. And I feel like as a parent, you want to do better.
Yeah,
You want more
for
for your
sure.
kid. I'm not trying to kill myself doing it, but I do feel like I'm like, oh my gosh, like at this age, I wasn't doing half of the stuff that my
Listen,
daughter's doing.
these kids are immensely blessed. And I grew up well, I will say that. But I was telling my best friends like maybe a month ago, maybe not even a month ago.
Mhm.
Caleb, my oldest son, he's 7. He walks up to me and he's like, Mom, I really want your salmon tonight.
Right. Right.
First of all,
Hmm.
I don't remember eating salmon until I think I was an adult, at least 16.
Right.
Okay. This now I could be wrong. I might have had a salmon croquette that came out the canned
Hmm.
salmon,
Hmm.
but just salmon, like,
Yeah.
first of all, that's an elite fish at this point. It's an elite fish. It's
Mhm.
not cheap. It's not tilapia. Okay, we didn't just,
Right.
my uncles like love to fish. So I used to eat fish all the time, but it was like the fish with the bones in it. So you gotta be careful if you start choking to take a little bit of bread.
Right.
That was me. Okay, we had fish fries growing up. But salmon, I
Right.
genuinely don't believe I had that fish until I was much older, if not an adult. So for the kid
Hmm.
to walk up on me and was like, Mom, I
Yeah.
really
This is
want
what I
your
want.
salmon tonight.
Right.
first of all, we don't even have that in the fridge or the freezer. Okay,
Mhm.
so I don't know how we're gonna make that happen.
I
Long story
think
short, he ended up with the salmon. Okay.
there's so much power in there's so much power in wanting to provide our kids that, because
Yeah,
even if we say like we grew up well, there's still struggle in that, and especially as
hmm,
like a Black person.
for sure.
um I think even more being so for me, like as a like coming from a family that came here with nothing,
Yeah.
like they're struggling to survive. And my husband is also a first generation American as well. And his family has a story of coming over here on a boat, literally. Like
Oh
it's not
wow.
just like a play thing. So they actually came here that way, almost drowned, like those type of things. There's
Wow.
power in that, and it makes you appreciate more.
Hmm.
And I love when I used to go to the Caribbean and we're bathing in buckets because there's no running water. Or if you see an animal walking around, that just might be what you're eating, but it just
Just
feels
might
so
be.
much cleaner and fresher. And there's something that I appreciate about that. So, like, even in the way that I'm parenting, like, I take my daughter to pick fruit. Like, we go out, she'll look at fish. She's always cooking with me. In fact, just like what you shared, like, we woke up, it was like 6:30 Saturday. This was literally last week. Mommy, sometimes I like to bake. So you already know when they tell you they like something, that
Say
means they want
less.
it.
Say less.
So she said, and I said, well, what do you like to bake, Genevieve? Sometimes I like biscuits, mommy. So I make it from scratch. So in other words, it was, Mom, get up, we're going downstairs and we're baking biscuits. So, we have
Wow.
like our magic aprons and those type of things. But I think there's just such beauty and bonding and creating those memories.
For
And if I
sure.
tell her that we're baking anything, she can pick out what you need to bake. Like, she's not confused. She knows the baking soda and the flour is for that.
Hmm.
So I'm happy that she's able to experience that with me, because it's things that I've done with my grandmother. More so when I was growing up, it was like pulling teeth, because a Caribbean grandma is like, why are you stirring it like that? Why is the pot so hot? You got to turn that down. But I am a great cook. I can say that
Yeah.
about myself. So yeah.
That's great. Like I'm so obviously we have a different experience with rearing our children. My children are rarely in the kitchen with me. They have a general appreciation for it. Like if I'm making pancakes
Mhm.
or something of that nature, they may want to crack the eggs, maybe. But I'm,
Right.
I'm parenting boys. So I'm trying to toggle that line of when do I start teaching you to fend for
Right.
yourself because you may not be a husband for a long time.
Right.
Yet wanting to serve them as little kings and things like that. So I teeter the line a little bit with
Yeah.
that. But I can definitely relate to the wanting to give your babies the absolute best. And
Yes.
sparing no expense because those kids are blessed and I don't take it for granted. I'm
Hmm.
unapologetic about it. If God continues to sustain me and bless me in the way that He does,
Yep.
my kids, I'm going to continue to spare no expense and be unapologetic about it
Yes.
and be the house that your friends are safe here. And one of the
Hmm.
things that I've been really like a heart's desire of mine is to be the kid
Right.
house, right? Like, so I
Yeah.
teach children's church at church, and anytime that I see those kids, I don't know what they go through at the house. I'm assuming they're well cared for, but if they're not, like when they see Miss Dree has a smile. Miss Dree is going to love you back to life. Miss Dree affirms you. And I do that because I want to make sure that, every kid is seen. Every kid feels special. Like it's really
Yeah.
important. Like I'm a football mom now. So I think I'm going to be a team mom this season. So one of the things that I told the coach is that, like, listen, y'all coach, but on the sidelines, these are my babies until I send them back to their parent. And it's one
Yes.
of those things like I was innately created to nurture. And I love that about me. I was innately created to nurture and just protect and care for.
Mhm.
Dalanika, I'm gonna ask you to share just your birthing experience, because I feel like it's really important for everyone to understand just how you've come to be this beacon of light that you are when it comes to parenting your daughter. Because maybe some people need context, like, nah, sis, you're gonna get this grands and call it a
Right.
day. Like, I got some grands in the freezer, and we gonna call it a day. I really want people to have context to why you parent the way that you do, and you will go to the ends of the earth for your daughter.
Yes. So I think as a mom, just like you, I feel like since I've been growing up, I was always the babysitter. I remember my cousin telling me a story. He said, you were like 4 years old and we were walking in the mall and he said, I took a baby out of a stroller. Like, that's just me. I love kids. I know I'm crazy, right? I love
What?
kids. I love kids. And he said, we were walking, we were like, why would you just pick a baby up? Because I like babies. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I remember like growing up, first I thought I was going to be an OBGYN. And then I was like, I'll be a midwife. Then I was in school for nursing. And it wasn't my calling, but I ended up in early childhood. And now that's how I'm into like family engagement, all of those things. But one of the
Yeah.
best things is teaching the importance of family and just nurturing those kids so that they become successful, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just in me, it's just innate. And so wanting to become a mother, that was always a goal of mine. Like, as a
Yeah.
little kid, some people dream about, I don't know, maybe being an entrepreneur. Like, I always knew I wanted to be a career woman like my mom, but I have such a big family and I always wanted to be a mom.
Yeah.
And so you know shortly after getting married, I was like, okay, let's do this. And like I already shared, it happened rather
Mm.
quickly, but I think from the moment of conception, the baby doesn't have to be here, right? You're a
Mm-hmm.
mom,
Yeah, for
because
sure.
your instinct is to worry, like, am I doing the right things? Am I eating the right things? How, like, you have, especially me, like, I have all of this mapped out. Like, okay, I'm doing this now, and I'm going to be doing this, and this
Yeah.
is, I'm going to have a whole natural birth, and I didn't want an epidural, and, all of those things. And I
All
never
the
wanted a C-section.
things.
Yeah, never wanted, and I'm going to breastfeed. I'm going to do all of the things, right? And so I remember I didn't even want to know the gender. I'm like, there's no more
Oh,
surprises in life.
wow.
Let's just let's just wait until the baby comes. But he really
Yeah.
wanted to. He's like, I'm a planner. I'm like, the things we need, diapers, wipes, cribs, you don't need a gender for that, right?
Yeah.
And so right around our anniversary, I want to say we traveled a lot more then. But I was like, it's our anniversary weekend. And I took him to one of those 3D ultrasound places. And he was like, why are we here? I said, you want to know the gender? And he got really excited. And he's like, okay, well, let's save it for when we come back from the weekend. I'm like, so you don't want to find out now after you've been begging me for the last 4 months to know the gender of this
Oh.
baby? And so we took it home on a tape. After the weekend, we found out we were having a girl, and his reaction is priceless to this day. I told him I'm going to tell our daughter, because he wanted a boy real bad. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, real bad.
That first
We were
boy.
shopping over the weekend. He was buying boy clothes. I'm like, well, it was kind of, girls can rock a guy like little sweatsuit. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay. In my heart, I knew it was a girl. So
Mm.
whatever. But we found out it was a girl, and literally the week after that, that was at 21 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
At 22 weeks, and I had a really good practice. It's nothing against the practice. And just remind me later, because I did go through like a little season after she was born, and I was like, I just want to like get these people for this. But I remember being 22 weeks and I was like, something wasn't right, because you're reading things and I'm like, this
Yeah.
really looks like it could be the mucus plug.
Yeah.
Typically, there was another nurse on the hotline and she would say, we don't like moms to worry, right? So she always made me an appointment. I had like spotting earlier in the pregnancy and those things. And she would just always make me an appointment. But this particular nurse, I remember calling over the span of maybe like 2 days. And sometimes I beat myself up because I was like, ah, like my thing is just listen to your body. I wish I
Yeah,
would have
for
just gone to the
sure.
emergency room, right? And so she was like, I told you yesterday it could be this. Do you want to come in tomorrow or Friday? I was like, tomorrow. Like, get me in here tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So I go to the doctor, and of course, my mom, being my mom, she was with me.
Helicopter. Yeah. In there.
Right? Came in real clutch. So she was there with me. And I remember them. I had taken pictures because I was like, this just doesn't look right.
Yeah.
And so they did like the abdominal one, and she was like, okay, all looks well. But when they were doing, the transvaginal, I was like, so is everything okay? But she said, oh, I'm still looking. So I said, okay. So she said, I'll be right back. And you know, when they don't answer your questions, what that means. She
Mm.
came back with the doctor, and the doctor said, okay, so I want to explain to you what she's seeing. And I think I was 22 weeks and 3 days.
Yeah.
She said, you're already about, like, you're very open. There's not going to be, she doesn't even know if there'll be a cerclage. Like, you need to go right to the hospital.
Mm.
So I said, okay, I already knew in my mind the downtown hospital is where they take babies that early. But
Yeah.
she said, I admit to Altamont. And, you know, if you go there, we can get you a bed really fast. So I was like, shoot, I'm gonna drive. She's like, did you drive? Your mom's driving. So I get to the hospital and they had already called, phoned it in. And then, long story short, it resulted in an ambulance ride. Them telling me I was already about 3 to 4 centimeters. I was very
Mm.
thin. They didn't think there was anything they could do. Now, I want to put this into perspective because she was due November 24th, and this was in July.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I was like, okay. So they put on I get in the ambulance, they have me on a stretcher. Now they don't want me to walk. They're doing like in the movies where I'm using like a bedpan. Like it was just the whole nine. And so I'm in there and I'm like, okay. And there's like a bunch of little details I'm leaving out, you know, trying not to get overly emotional, but
Yeah.
think that I get there and they were like, you're going upstairs. But when I get in the room, they're like, no, 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 bring her back downstairs to labor and delivery because they were scared that I was going to like have her. And so they turned the paramedics around, put me back in the elevator. I went downstairs and they had me in a room. And they were like, okay, this is what we're seeing. The moment I got in there, they were like, do you basically ask me, did I want them to resuscitate her if anything were to happen?
Ooh.
Um, Funny story. I have the same Shahid, right? Because he did end up being very successful. He's still my best friend. He's Evie's godfather, but he had a friend, and we are mutual friends, but I forgot she worked there. So she was a NICU nurse. I remember kicking
Yeah.
the doctors out because I was like, my husband's not here. Like, how can you
Yeah.
ask me what I'm doing with my kid
Facts.
when my
Facts.
husband's not in the room? He was on the way. And she said, yeah, they came down and was like, this lady kicked the doctors out and everybody out of the room. Because, like, imagine like being wheeled in and you're terrified. You don't know what's going on. You're
Yeah, for
only
sure.
22 pregnant, right? And they're telling you, like, what do you want to do? Like, you're basically making the decision. Do you want your baby to survive? And they were like, you can do comfort care. So I'm like thinking, those sound like great words. What's that? They're like, you can hold the baby until, like, after you have it, you just hold it, you know? And I was just like, oh my God. So, long story short, he gets there, and this was the first time I ever saw my husband cry. After they kept coming in and out, and he said, if we wanted to, and this is not to be controversial, but he said, you know, if we wanted to do that, we would have had an abortion. You do
Mm-hmm.
what you need to do to like help my baby survive. They made
Facts.
no mistake in telling me like up until a couple of years ago, she wouldn't have been considered viable. I remember it was the first time, like now, you know, like going through counseling and things, I recognize that that was anxiety attacks, but my body was shaken
Mm-hmm.
because there were so many people. She had a team of doctors, you know, your neonatologist and your pulmonologist and your blah, blah, blahs. Then I had my own team of doctors.
Yeah.
And so it was just all these people in the room, the baby nurses, my nurses, and they were just delivering information to me, but my body was like convulsing, like I had a fever. So I remember it was a Jamaican doctor, him telling them, can you all like excuse us for a moment, like
Mm.
a moment? And he said to me, do you understand what's happening to your body? I said, no. He was like, the information that we're giving you is overwhelming. And you're doing, I still do this to this day. I'm very much a masker, right? Like we push through it.
Yeah.
But I was like so like holding myself together. And I'm just like, okay. And he was like, I know this is your reaction, but inside your body's reacting to the news that you're
Yes.
receiving.
Yeah.
Um, and so after like day 2 or 3, I was like, okay, I'm in this hospital because they wouldn't let me get up. I couldn't use the bathroom. And
Yeah.
then we were trying to do the gravity thing where like my legs are up some doctors were like, that's old school. But I'm like, but
Trying to
nobody's
hold her
having it.
in at this
Right.
point.
So put my
Yeah.
legs up. So like my back is going numb and I'm just like turning. I was so uncomfy. And I remember, I think the day before, a doctor telling me, I want you to understand that women, when they're in here, because they had told me stories and they had a very good like NICU unit. They
Okay.
had like things for the moms, they had
I think my
child life
goddaughter was born
specialists.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he was like, I just want you to know after like a few days, moms can sometimes like go through depression, right? Because you're in this room. I want
Yeah.
you to know that. I remember telling him, like, this is for my baby. Like, I am
Mm.
good. Like, I'm going to do whatever I have to do. I think I woke up on day 3. I looked out the window and I was bawling. My mom was like, what was wrong? I was like, I'm literally stuck in this room. Like, can I go on a wheelchair ride? I remember asking, can I go on a wheelchair ride? They
Yeah.
told me no. Like, you have to stay in this bed because in case anything happens. And even in those span of those few days, also, I remember them, it was like a lot of nurse chatter about the room I was in. So
Yeah.
I remember telling a nurse, like, be straight up with me. Why are they trying to switch my room? Like, I'm fine here. And she said, well, we want to put you closer to the emergency, like the delivery room, just in case. Ah.
Mm.
So I was like, okay. So that was that. And I just remember just being in there and finally after like day 5, they're like, okay, or 6, they were like, no baby yet. You're gonna be in here indefinitely. You can get up to use the bathroom. So I'm like, okay, cool. Cool beans. I'm gonna get up, use the bathroom, whatever. So I'm going to the bathroom a couple of times, drinking all my water, staying elevated. I think I remember the second day after they gave me bathroom privileges.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I should have stayed in that bed. But it was the middle of the night, and I was like, "Ooh." Like, I never had a baby before, so I'm thinking I
Yeah.
have bathroom
I have
cramps.
to
Like,
use, yeah, I might have to do number two. I don't
right.
know.
So I'm like, so all night, and my mom's like, my mom had, I'm a twin, right? And so she had been on bed rest her first pregnancy, second, and she had a C-section, second pregnancy, C-section. My younger sister, we're like 16 years apart, but she was also a C-section. So she
Mm.
never had a natural birth, right? She was like rubbing my back and they gave me like an antacid and she's like rubbing my tummy and I'm like no more Ensure because dairy does irritate me. So they started
Mm-hmm.
giving me the juice kind. That was just disgusting.
Yeah, that's
So
nasty.
it was super sweet and I don't like sweets, right? And so finally like my husband's family came to visit, all the things. And so we're there and it was after laboring. I guess I was in active labor basically.
Hmm.
And even though they had the monitor and all of that stuff, it wasn't really reading as such. They
Yeah.
did see like some decelerations, those things with her. But I remember the nurse saying, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like I was giving you, it was basically like Tums kind of,
Hmm.
but really it wasn't my stomach. It was like labor."
Yeah.
So I remember getting up the last time to go to the bathroom and then I saw like all this blood. And so they had told us what buttons to hit. But my mom, being my mom, she hit like all the buttons. And she was like, she's bleeding. Like
Yeah.
what's going on? Um, I know this is a long story, but like in between the time, I remember us, there was a MFM, which is like a maternal fetal medicine doctor.
Hmm.
And she just kept delivering bad news. And I remember my mom setting her straight, like, we know all the negatives. Like, what can we do? So she was like, well, she can get a steroid shot. And I'm like, finally, after like 2 or 3 days, like, give me the shot. Like, what do I have to do for Genevieve's lungs? So I had to take 2 rounds of that. Extremely painful. Those needles are long.
Hmm.
They're big.
Hmm.
And they stick you right back here.
They sure
But
do.
um, so I did the steroid shot, but to this day, because I did ask for my surgical report, she put in there they did not recommend me having the surgery that I chose. The type of cesarean that I had to get a classical cesarean, and they now do like a bikini cut. But what it is
Hmm.
kind of like the old school way where they cut up and
Oh, up
down.
and down. So you have a
Yeah,
vertical. Wow.
yeah. So so they did like the bikini one, but on
Yeah.
the inside, my uterus is cut, vertical.
Mm.
Because at that gestation, your uterus hasn't expanded to where your muscles, from my understanding, so where it like thins out. So it's still like really, They did like this,
Yeah.
like it's still stiff, so they have to cut it that way. But they said it's high risk. If you ever have kids again, you have risk for this and uterine rupture,
Yeah.
you always have to take them early and you always have to have a cesarean. Do what you got to do because I'm just trying to save my
I'm just
kid.
trying to get this one. This one. I want this
Right.
one. Let's not
So,
focus on the others. This one.
right. And they also said at that gestation because they're not fully formed, so her head would be too fragile. So I didn't want to try to push.
Oh, for
But
sure.
her
Yeah.
her bag was already bulging when I went in. So when they saw like the blood and everything, they measured me. Her feet were out. They're like, okay, I'm gonna tell you, it was a Spanish doctor. He said, I feel the two little feet, right? And it was the middle of a shift change. So we have two teams of doctors, but it was also two additional teams of doctors. I
Mm.
don't remember how many people were in there, but I feel like there had to be at least 20 people from this shift. And I remember they made a joke because they were like, this is happening. Okay, that's a shift change. Like, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So she was born, I believe, at 7:16. And you know, the new shift starts at around 7.
Round
So that's
7.
literally how chaotic it was. And I think a regret that my husband has shared with me to this day is that he didn't get to see the delivery because they had to
Oh,
end up putting me to sleep. I kept
yeah.
having like troubles with my IV and they kept failing. Um, and so when they stuck me, I remember I told them, hey, I know this one is gonna give out. So when we were in the operating room, because they put me on the table, he's like, don't push. I'm like, I didn't even know I had to push in the first place because I didn't even know this was labor.
Yeah.
And I'm like on the table, and the anesthetist, they're like trying to give you, they're doing all of the stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's not going to work. I remember them sticking me back in a place that had already failed. And even after I left the hospital, I felt the pain there for months because it hurt, right?
Yeah,
Wherever they,
the vein blown.
right.
I tell them all the time, I have a small rolling
Mhm.
vein. You better get it and get it
Yeah,
right. Go ahead and get the little sonography thing because you're gonna miss.
right.
You're
So
going to
yes, I
miss.
had that. I had that too. That I do remember that. And so I remember. And I told my friend this, but he's like, I don't think that happened in the emergency room. I said, I'm telling you about my experience. I don't know about anybody else, but because it was the middle of a shift change, a different doctor actually delivered her than the one who checked me.
Hmm.
And so she came in and they were like prepping me. I remember I grabbed her hand and I was like, please don't cut me. Like I didn't have an epidural or anything because they had to put me to sleep. It was general anesthesia. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess that's why I went back to my husband. Like if it's general, they can't be in the room with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so they made him change and everything. And when I had the baby, he wasn't in there. And I remember coming to, and I was like, whoa, how long was I asleep? Because whatever medicine they gave me, it was the best 10 minutes or however long it
I'm
took to
telling
get
you,
that baby, the best sleep.
they tell you to count
Um,
backwards from 10, and I think you may make it to 6. Then
right.
you're out of there.
I don't even think I got that far. I was like 10, 9, 8, maybe. And I mean, when I woke up, it was so refreshing. It was the best sleep. Um, but I always laugh. I didn't ask about my baby. I just said, how long was I asleep? Because I must have been stressed and felt real good. But I remember them wheeling me out because they let you like, come to for a little bit before they
Yeah,
bring you out
for
before you
sure.
go to recovery. And I said to my husband, I remember asking them, can I see her? And they said, well, typically we don't, but we can wheel you there. So I was still in my like bed, like the stretcher before and they like wheel me by her room and I kind of saw it. But I asked him, I said, did you get a picture of her? Because when babies are born, they hold them up.
Yeah.
And I hadn't realized that he wasn't in there yet.
Mm.
And so he was like, yeah, 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 I got it. So he shows me this picture. First picture I saw of my baby. And like, I hate even saying it, but I was like so disappointed because it was her hooked up. It was everything, like the tubes,
Yeah.
any machine you can think of was on her at that
Yeah.
time. And that was the first time I saw my baby.
How big was she when she was born?
She was a 1 pound and 7 ounces.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, ugh,
Yeah.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yep.
And it's
Mhm.
one of those things, that's why I really want you to give them context to
Right.
how difficult it was getting her here. And how old
Right,
is
right.
Genevieve now?
She is 4. She'll be 5 in July,
So
July
the
30th.
miracle of this little girl, I
Yeah.
mean, I can remember during this time we were preparing just some different stuff for my nonprofit, and
Right.
just the dedication of Dalanika. She was still checking in. I think we were in a board meeting and you texted me was like,
Yeah.
I had her. And I'm like, wait,
Right.
no, it's too early.
Right.
What do you mean you had her? Like,
Everybody
wait.
was like, "You did what?
No,
Like
no, no,
what?
no,
You did
no, no. Like
what?" Yeah.
what?
Yeah. Hmm.
We were in a board meeting and we
Yeah.
instantly went into prayer. Like we instantly went
Mhm.
into prayer for you and was like, oh God, like please, 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 please. And today is like seeing her picture that always brings a smile to my face because she is the cutest little thing you will ever
Yeah.
see.
Thank you.
She is so
She
cute.
has so much personality. Some days I'm like, you know what? She is a fighter through and through. And I
Yeah.
always tell her, this is how you survive, but you don't have to survive no more. So I need you to like reel it in. Because I say
Facts.
she's 14. She's a 14-ager. Like she's not just 4.
Listen.
And she's like, she sticks to her guns and she's so determined. And I just
Yeah.
love that about her personality. Um, but yeah, it was a lot. And I definitely appreciate all of the prayer warriors because a lot of people, I'm kind of old school where I feel
Mhm.
like there's like a double-edged sword. Like I have faith and I appreciate the people that share their pregnancy right away. But I'm a little bit more guarded and I'm like, I just want praying people to know.
Yeah, for sure.
So only praying people knew I had her.
Yeah.
And when people finally were like, "You had a baby?" I'm like, "Yeah, you didn't even know I was pregnant, right?" Because I
Yeah.
didn't even get to 6 months, really, technically. Um, because she ended up being born at 23 weeks and 2 days. So I think I
Yeah.
stayed in the hospital probably 9 days. I don't know. I have to do the
Mhm.
math, but 9 days is a lifetime. And then she spent 100 days in the hospital.
Mhm.
Um, so that was also another whole thing with this whole journey. Like it was a
Yeah,
lot.
for
It was a
sure.
lot.
That's why this podcast is so important because
Mhm.
I could not think of anyone better than you to talk about it because we all hear motherhood is magical and you miss the magic of a lot of it.
Yeah.
Like we were talking yesterday, like maternity photos, the whole nine, you want the bump, the experience. There's a lot that was left to be desired, but you have the fruit of this beautiful little girl
Yes.
now, but the struggle to get her here, like the level of love that you had and the level of care that you
Hmm.
even bringing her home after 100 days. Like many
Right.
of us, we have we be struggling when we bring our baby home after 2 weeks because
Right.
but not having like the immediate care for her and then having to learn a different form of care because I think when you brought her home she still had her breathing machine, correct?
She did. And I remember my husband being like, because people had an issue with it. Not everybody knows what your normal is, right? They're not going
Yeah.
to be okay with it. And they were like, why are you guys bringing her home like that? And I'm like, well, they said that that's all she needs. And she literally just being there.
Yeah.
And she thrives when we're there. So he had gotten upset one day. He probably doesn't know I'm going to say this, but he was like, if they don't like it, they don't have to come see her. If it
Facts.
bothers them so much that she's going to be on this machine, just don't come see her.
Yeah.
And I was kind of okay with that because they had given us like, don't let her get sick, don't let people kiss her, don't da 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 da, because preemies can't get sick, and she was still
Hmm.
on this breathing machine. And actually, that's why she came home at 100 days instead of 97, which is almost like it's great for a child of that gestation. Um, because they tried to trial her off of the oxygen. They took away the
Hmm.
machine to see how she would do, and she didn't pass the breathing test.
Yeah.
And so that's when she had to be on like a 72-hour like watch after that. And so we got to bring her home at 100 days.
Yeah,
But I mean, with premature babies, there's a ton of things that just happen because they're not fully developed.
for
And it
sure.
was really a space for me when I was like, this is like the miracle of God. Like, this is his work. To watch a baby form outside of the womb, like, I'm so grateful that God gives us like science and doctors to really help develop this thing,
Yeah.
because I remember walking in one day And the nurse said to me, "Oh, mom, she found her nipples came in, like her, her chest." And I was like, "What do
Wow.
you mean?" Like, I didn't even recognize she didn't have them. So I started looking at old pictures and I said, "Oh my God, she has like no anatomy of like breast. Like she had no areola." Um, and they started to form. Even like, her other areas. I remember her first diaper change. I was so scared that I was like I asked, like, is this normal? They're like, it'll
Yeah.
form. It'll form. Her eyes were still like kind of fused. They weren't open yet.
Yeah.
Um, then she would like go into these crises, like on the weekends, like her oxygen would dip and all of this stuff would happen. So there's a ton of things that can go wrong with a
Yeah.
preemie that you don't want to go wrong. So they were like,
Mm-hmm.
they hope it's not, the I think it's called neck, but it's like necroenterocolitis or something with their
Yeah.
stomach where it damaged the intestines, and oftentimes they have to have surgery, get it removed. They
Mm.
thought it was that, but really she was having adrenal crises. Her body was not producing the stress hormone. So then she had to be on a tablet for that. They want to watch for ROP, which can cause blindness, and oxygen levels can interfere with that. But if your baby's on oxygen, up until a certain gestation, they watch for that. She was on like a hold for like moving her when she was born because they didn't want to damage her skull. With
Yeah.
her lungs, there was that. With her heart, they were watching for like I can't remember what they call it now, but it's like a little hole in the heart. And they were like, she didn't have it, then it happened, but then it closed by the grace of God. So she didn't need surgery for that. Just anything from head to toe.
Yeah.
When we left, we had to see the pulmonologist, the everything. It was just a lot. From
Yeah.
the brain to the eyes to the lungs to the your kidneys to everything.
Yeah.
We had to watch for.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, a little bit of backstory. So, I am the baby of my mom's two children, but my mother has a similar experience. My brother's special needs. He wasn't supposed to live past 4. He had cerebral palsy. He was supposed to live
Yes.
past 4. He's 31. No, I'm 31. He's
Yes.
32.
God's way.
To give you context, he didn't walk until he was 4. When he was born, my mom is 100 pounds soaking wet, and she says that he fit in the palm of her hand, like
Mhm.
from here to here. He was 2 pounds when he was born, so she has a lot of the similarities that you talked about with just caring for a child that is born
Mhm.
prematurely. And especially your first child, because my brother was her first child.
It's tough.
It's difficult because your entire life changes, and we talked about this
Mhm.
prior to today's podcast about how your life was solely mom after having
Mhm.
her, because
Mhm.
there was a layer of you that you had to help her survive. Like literally, we
Mhm.
parents have to help your children survive,
Right, right,
but you literally had to do this thing right so that she could live.
right. Yeah.
Um, Tell us about what your healing journey is like, because even now, I mean, like I told her, I wish we had that mic on yesterday because we would have
I
got some
know.
content for y'all. Learning you again as anything but mom. What has that been like? Because you talked about your faith just being, I would say, reborn in a lot of ways. Tell us about what that has been for you.
So for me, I shared in the beginning, like I joked about being type A, but I'm very much a planner. I want to plan what I'm doing 6 months from now. I want to plan what I'm doing tomorrow. I want to plan what I did last week. And so for me, it was just all about like the plan and what life would look like and what we'd be doing with her and all of those things. And that was like completely upended because that was not her story. And
Yeah,
I think it really tested my faith because I very much like to have that control of what my life looks like.
for sure.
But when your baby is in a hospital 25 minutes from you, and your husband's at work and you just had a C-section and he's like calling Uber drivers because you can't drive. You
Yeah,
cannot drive like that. To come and pick you up and you have to just commute every day and you have that mom guilt because what mother leaves her baby in the hospital for hours every day
yeah.
for, machines to monitor her and you can't like stop by. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that's not to say because some people physically can't. And
Hmm.
that's the guilt that like that plays in your mind. And
For
so
sure.
it really tests your relationship also, because then you're only mom. Like I had to be a reborn wife. Like I had to learn what it was to be a wife and a mother, and a mother of a premature child.
Yeah,
And like not get on his nerves about everything that he's doing, because
for
his
sure.
survival matters too,
For
right?
sure.
And so I'm still relearning that. And it wasn't like we were, I mean, it was still relatively, I wouldn't say quick when we had her after being married, but we were married in 2018 and she was born in 2019.
Hmm.
So it was about a year.
Yeah.
Um, but it would have been a little bit longer had she stayed inside the womb. But it's just a matter of just trying to make sure that you're doing everything right. And then you
Yeah.
having all of those appointments. She had several appointments every week, because of all of the things that were going on with her. So there's literally no time for anything else. There's no time
Hmm.
for work. There's no time for whatever you're passionate about, because you need to make sure that you're on her. You need to make sure she's breathing right. Whatever medication she has to have all of that. And then she also had in-home therapies. So they were like coming to the house, they were dropping off the DME was dropping off like the medical equipment.
Yeah.
Um, but whatever therapy was doing, I would try to do it so that she's doing it twice a day.
Yeah.
And I remember, I think we went to the endocrinologist and he said, "Can I just tell you?" And I don't really say this. He said, "She's so advanced from what 23 weekers are typically like. And I think it's your love, like it's a mother's love." And he said, "A lot of
Yeah.
people don't recognize that, but I can tell you're working with her," because I think she like said hi to him. And they had did the tests. They had to use like her IV, but it's just there's something in the power of how we're connected.
For sure.
Even we can't understand it, right? It's like a spirit, just like the Holy Spirit, like we're so connected. But they would even make me do things like just put like breast milk on something for her to smell, like the
Hmm.
colostrum, or have me look at a picture of her, because your body is connected to your baby in ways that we don't
For
understand.
sure.
And he would just say like he was just so proud. And so anytime I bring her, like really, I just want to call those doctors and be like, "Do you see my baby that you said couldn't live? She's
Hmm.
right here." They
This
gave her a one
Here she
percent.
is.
Right. They said she had a 1% chance of survival. And
Wow.
I'm always like, she's that one.
That
She's
one, that
definitely
one in is of 100. That
right.
1%, she the one.
Right.
She is the one. That just gives me such joy. Um, I think it's really important, as you're continuing to heal, like I could see like the emotion behind it, because it
Yeah.
was 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago, but it's still fresh because there's
Oh,
still
so fresh.
things that
Mhm.
unearths. I mean, just experiences. We talked about this yesterday, that the therapist said you have to grieve the life you never got to have sometimes before
Mhm.
healing can really begin. Um,
Right.
and sometimes you don't even know what you missed out on
Right. Yeah.
until you see someone else with it, or you see or you hear about someone else's experience. I mean, we would be here all day if I talked to you about some of
Mhm.
my firsts and some of the traumatic things that I've experienced as a mom. Um, and it took a minute for me, I would say like 2020-ish, before I
Hmm.
started embracing being anything but mom. I became a mom in
Mhm.
2016. I got married in
Right.
2014. Caleb was very much so planned. We wanted to wait a year. We were on birth control for a year because my
Right.
family is fertile myrtle. We get pregnant. Me and my brother are Irish twins, just to give you context.
Really? Mhm.
So we get pregnant very, very quickly. So we said, we're going to do birth control for an entire year, and then we'll get off. It takes about 6 months or so for the chemicals and things to get out of your system. So we should be having him around getting pregnant around the 18-month mark, right? Planning.
Mhm.
The minute I got off that birth control, I was pregnant the next cycle. And Caleb was very much
I
so here.
wonder, I often wonder if it's because we know we're tracking our body or something. Because when I
I
tell
do.
you,
I do.
yeah,
If
I do too. And I'm
I
like,
experienced the same exact thing that you did. The HCG
yeah,
levels were still lower. When I
yeah.
had the first ultrasound to confirm Caleb's pregnancy, all they saw was the fertilized sac, because that period was
Mhm.
missed. Okay. And the minute that it misses, we pregnant. Like,
Yeah.
go get the test because we pregnant. Okay. There's no question about it. My body is like
Exactly.
clockwork. It is like
Mhm.
clockwork. And same thing with you. They were sending me the quest. I went every single day for about a week to confirm that my HCG
Mhm.
levels were continuing to double and triple until I went back to the hospital and they saw the heartbeat because I saw the fertilized yolk. I'm like, we
Yeah.
can't really confirm anything, but it is a fertilized sac there, but
Mhm.
there's nothing beaten. Okay, so
Right.
I can't confirm or deny. Let's just make sure that you doing what you need to do. But I am just in awe of your strength. And again, a mother's love, there is nothing like it. Something chemically happens to us when
It
we become a
does.
parent. Something happens to us that will never be the same again. There's something that chemically happens to us. We can smell our baby's head and produce
Hmm.
milk. Like
Yeah.
there are just some things that chemically God created us so perfectly and so intentionally to be
Right.
able to provide and nourish. Like most people who, like I said, men, sometimes men aren't built for this, okay? Because they can fall asleep and stuff, but I can
Yeah.
distinguish my children's cry to this day. I have two of them, but I know
You
which
sure can.
one is crying.
You sure
I
can.
to this day in a room of other children,
Mhm.
I know which one is mine because I know they
Absolutely.
cry. And it's
Yeah.
so it's so refreshing. I think motherhood helped me re-identify how God is intentional and loves us perfectly. He's not a mother,
Yes.
but he is certainly a father, and he was the creator of us. So he knows each of us, like the strands of our hair, like all of those are numbered, and he knows
Yes.
each of us. One of the
I
things that I'm
remember
go ahead.
there was this these scriptures. I feel like the last name was like Ashley Turk or I can't remember the site, but the moment like I used to read them every day. And there's some for certain stages of your pregnancy. But when I was on bed rest, I would read every scripture. Like we are wonderfully made, like we're
Yeah,
crafted in like he knows everything about us.
for
And
sure.
it was definitely with intention. And I know she has a purpose, which is why she's here. But I would just read those things like every day. Like
Yeah.
scripture really helped me get through. And when she was in the NICU, also every day we would read from her children's Bible. We read it twice over. So we would read like one of the little stories every time we left her room. And she would react to it because the monitors, they can tell you.
Hmm.
Like when the oxygen goes up or the
Yeah.
heart rate increases, they react to those things. So, if there's anybody who does have a preemie who's listening, I feel like definitely
Yes.
read to your baby and talk to your baby and develop a routine because it will carry over for
It
sure.
absolutely does. It absolutely does. I think the last podcast that was aired, not the one that's going to play before this, but the last one that was
Yeah.
aired, I think episode 4, I talked about my son accepting Jesus.
Hmm.
And he's 7. And he was just so excited about this newfound relationship with Christ. And he understood, like, okay, the sacrifice that
Hmm.
Jesus made for us. And I understood then, you talk about purpose. It just further helped me understand that these kids don't belong to us. They are just
Yeah,
spirits
no.
that were assigned to us to steward. And it is our responsibility to cultivate that relationship with them. And one of the ways I'm doing that is by living out my faith in front of them. I do an affirmation for
Mhm.
myself that says I parent from my most healed place. And in
Yes.
doing that, I've got to be actively healing, right? Because there's some things that I've experienced. Everything went sweet. There are some things that I experienced that I
Right.
am still, processing and healing from. But in order to parent them from the healed place, I've got to be actually doing the work of healing and embracing that I'm a full daughter before I'm their mom. And when I say
Yeah.
daughter, not a natural daughter, but a daughter of God. And like in reality, these just my brothers and sisters that I just have
Right.
on the earth, earthbound in reality, because
Right.
those are his sons. And he
Mhm.
just trusted me with them. If we gonna be honest about it, he just
Mhm.
trusted me with
Mhm.
them. Um, we are gonna transition real quick into our redefining moment because, like I said, we will be here all day. Because this
Yeah.
is oh, this is giving me the warm and fuzzies. This is gonna be like right after Mother's Day. after the dust settles. No, we gonna pick up the dust again because mothers need to be
Yes.
honored in a way. We need the
Mhm.
whole month, okay? Celebrate
Yes.
me, honor me, okay? Because what I had to deal with to get you here, my goodness, my goodness. But we're actually going to be reading from
Right.
Proverbs 31. And for those that
Mhm.
don't really have context to Proverbs 31, the Proverbs 31 woman isn't a real woman. She is actually an ideation or an idea of what King Lemuel's mother taught him about who to look for, basically. Like when we're
Right.
telling her, this is what you should be looking for when you try to wipe up somebody. This was her idea of a woman, right? So I'm actually going to read Proverbs chapter 31, verse 25 through 29, and I'm reading from the NLT version because I just like the way that it breaks down and makes it plain. It says, she is clothed with strength and dignity, and she laughs without fear of the future. When she speaks, her words are wise, and she gives instructions with kindness. She carefully watches everything in her household and suffers nothing from laziness. Her children stand and bless her. Her husband praises her. There are many virtuous and capable women in the world, but you surpass them all. Now, somebody would be like, okay, well, what does that have to do with a mother? Well, there's a little piece in there about children, but one of the things that I'm fully embracing, a mother's love. Like I said, I first have to embrace the fact that I am a daughter of God. And
Mhm.
there is an element of motherhood that we will block out every other aspect of life. And in some instances, it's not even our fault. Chemically, we're
No.
wired this way. We're built like this. God created us that way so that we could physically sustain it. I mean, there are certain pain levels that a woman's body will go through delivering and even after recovery that some people will die from that level of pain. It is
Yeah.
scientifically proven. So for a woman's body to be able to get a human being here earthbound, God had to wire us and build us differently, but I don't believe that He intended for us to be only mom. And if nothing
Exactly.
else, I am healing from that bad doctrine. Because some people, they'll try to make you feel bad about being,
Yeah, they
a
will.
stay-at-home mama. No, I honor you for doing that because you got one of the hardest jobs in the world, sis. Okay, I am grateful. I am
Yes.
grateful that I get to go to work and have some separation so that when I come home, I missed you a little bit. I'm grateful
Mhm.
for that time away. And then, just like you, I experienced that mom guilt. Well, I could be doing this or I could be doing more and this, that, and the third. But in order for us to truly heal from those certain seasons of life and
Mhm.
capitalize on all that God has for us, it's time for us to embrace and heal from that only mom. We're so much more than
Yeah.
mommy. We're so much more than mommy. We're all the things because one day Jen's gonna be, grown. She's gonna be you. You're
Yes,
gonna be
she
looking
will.
at you and she's gonna be talking about how you loved her to life. Literally, you loved her to
Right.
life. What did that scripture kind of bring to your mind or resonate with you? How does it resonate with you?
I think when we talk about words of affirmation, right? Because you can't pour from an empty cup.
For
So
sure.
I do also facilitate like parent and family enrichment courses. And we always offer um, you know, quotes for affirmation.
Hmm.
But just in verse 29, it says, there are many virtuous and capable women in the world, but you surpass them all.
Yeah.
And you might not think that you're the best mom, but I guarantee you, if you're doing all that you can for your kid in that moment, you're surpassing every other mom because you know your child's needs, you know what they want, you know all of those things. You're the best thing that they need.
Yeah.
And I'm never going to be able to mother your kids like you mother them.
Hmm.
Um, so, and there are things that we like we're always like watching, and even 27, like just carefully watching everything in the household and suffering nothing from laziness. Like I know I can speak for me, but I feel like I don't sit down. Like some weekends, I'm like, okay, it's cleaning weekend. When I'm like that, my husband's like, okay, Evie, let's get out of mommy's way. But he'll literally be like, okay, Nika, like, you want to just, what are you trying to do now? Like, let's just sit down. Like, sit down. And
Yeah,
I'm
that
like,
ain't my
well, this needs to
story.
be done. This needs to
Mm-mm.
be done. And there are some days, like last weekend, my grandmother was over, and I was like, this is the first Saturday in weeks that we've been home. So I was in my bed until about 11, which is that's not common for me at all. And she came and she peeked. She said, oh, you're up here. And I'm like, yes, I am. And I don't want to feel bad about it. I don't want to hear about it. This is just the
Yeah.
day. And but it was like the first time. And in those moments, like when I get to regroup, I always recognize where I need to slow down.
Yeah.
And so, just looking at this and just, we don't want to be lazy, right?
For
But we
sure.
also need to understand, like you're saying, we're more than just, because if we don't get time to just rest and even rest with the Holy Spirit, right?
For
And
sure.
just edify ourselves and build ourselves up with the word. Um, what does it profit us to gain the world and lose your soul, like all of those things
Yeah.
um are definitely scriptures that I point to when I'm trying to be all that I can be, which includes being a child of God. And I think
Yeah.
when we started this, I was like, that's who I am first, 100%. And
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, but that definitely was the verse that stood out to me, 29.
You said something just a minute ago that it really does. It hits home for me because there are certain times and certain places where we have to show up a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the Bible is this big book of information. There's stories and parables.
Yeah.
But it's important for us to have the relationship with the word itself. In Google, because sometimes I don't know where the scripture is at. I've heard it. I'm gonna be honest with you, but I need to get, and now that I'm, maturing in my faith, I'm getting context. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's been a couple years now where every single day I've been consistent, maybe for like 2 or 3 years now, where before I open any app on my phone, I read the word. And at first it was just the verse of the day. And now,
Mm-hmm.
like for the past year and a half, it's been I read the entire chapter for context,
Mm-hmm.
so that I can have context to what it is that I'm reading. And then that's when I learned that, a lot of people, this may be the first time they learned that the Proverbs 31 isn't a real person. It's
Yeah.
someone's idea, somebody else's mama's
Right.
idea. It's
Mm-hmm.
the woman she wishes she could be, right? I mean, it's so important for us to study to show yourself approved and to develop that relationship with the Father, and just learning who He is, because not only is that going to equip you and give you rest, the rest that you need, the
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is that you need, those are the things that your children are going to emulate. They're going to grow
Yeah.
up and they're going to want to be like mommy, who she can remember spending that quiet time and seeing you just resting with the Father. Because in reality, those moments when we're resting with the Father, when we're not anything else but His child, is
Mm-hmm.
where we are the most at peace
Right.
and where we are the most viable. Like
Yeah.
we were made to worship, we were made to be
Right.
with Him. He
And
made us for Himself.
I think that was your last video too, like just
Yeah,
what is worship, right? And I
He made
think
us to be with Him.
that's true discipleship,
Yeah, for sure.
just resting in Him and leaning on to His word. But also, I think it's a model, like we're constantly modeling, even outside of a biblical context for our children. We're always modeling.
For
They're
sure.
watching everything that we do, how we react, all of those things. And so, if we're just spending time with the word, even if, and my husband hates if we're like showing up to church late, right? But like, even if you're late, go, right?
Yeah.
Like, get connected. Be around people that are like-minded like you, that can build you up in Christ. And definitely, for me, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, I won't go too deep, but just
Mhm.
having her be connected to a ministry that she calls her church,
Yeah.
and like wants to invite people to her church and wants her cousin to come. Like, I love that for her. Like, I want
Yeah.
you to want Christ like I want Christ. And it starts when they're young. So
Hmm.
you have to plant the seed. Hmm.
Absolutely. We're seed planters. We're gardeners. If nothing else, we are seed planters. I'm full and just so
Yes.
happy that you joined me today. Y'all, if y'all didn't get nothing from this episode, you sleep, okay? You sleep. Share this with someone. I'm going to challenge you to share this with someone that actually is in their season of motherhood that may be dealing with postpartum depression. We didn't even get into all the
Oh
things.
God, we
We
might
may
need a
have to
part two.
yeah, we might have to run this back because there are so
Right.
many things and resources that I have learned and experiences that I see you. I mean, if you want to hop in the DMs, definitely do that. There are questions that can be answered so that they can do that. Where can they find you? Because there may be a mom. I'm not equipped to tell you all the things. My mama did it. I didn't have that story. But if you're dealing
I
with, where can they find you?
I am, you can Instagram. I'm more of an Instagram person these
There you
days, but
go.
it's just my first name, Dalanika,
All right.
Dalanika. And it's a private page, but if you message me or add me out, I do have some heart work that I want to do as a part of Genevieve's story,
Yeah.
that I've been working on. So maybe I'll have an open page one day, but definitely I'm always trying to stay connected. I've even joined like support groups on Facebook.
Yeah.
That kind of helped me through when I was going through. So I'm
Yeah.
happy to share those as well
Yeah,
because,
please do.
yes, because definitely I couldn't find positive stories about preemies. I kept saying, well, this happened, this happened, this happens. And when I was connected to that group, just seeing women share their stories or share their babies, I'm like, she's going to be just fine.
Yeah.
And so, and you're going to be just fine as a mom. Like, through the thick of it, like you're not recognizing that, you cannot see that. But on the other side of it, you might look back and laugh, you might look back and cry. But the best thing is that we are survivors and we can do it. Like we put on our panties and we just keep going. We get the help that we need to do so. It doesn't mean like truck through it and never get like therapies or anything. And
Yeah.
I was just sharing with Lyndria recently that I started therapy and it's just bringing some things to surface and it's very helpful. And so I say do that and get connected.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that is episode 6, y'all. I mean, it don't get no better than that. Like I said, we might have to do like a part 2 and just start unearthing. I've been thinking like maybe we should do like multiple people, like multiple mamas, and like just have us like a good pot. Like maybe that's a live. Who knows? Maybe we're gonna go
Like a
live on
panel.
IG or something and
Yes.
just talk about it. We may have to do that because yeah, some good stuff. Some good stuff. Until next time, you guys, I am so appreciative of you being with me, Dalanika. This is episode 6. Like, follow, comment, tell us your birthing stories if you're comfortable, and we will talk to you later. Bye, guys. Love you.